here in Ann Arbor today with Dr. Tom Shehab and Marie Miller-Brosnan. Dr. Shehab is the chairman of the Michigan Venture Capital Association and managing director at Arboretum Ventures. And Maureen is the executive director of the MVCA. And this organization has every venture capital firm in Michigan as a member, all 29 of them. And they have $3.9 billion under management between them all. And we're here today to talk about the startup and venture capital scene in the state of Michigan, and it's a pleasure to be here.
We're glad to have you.
So for those who don't know, and whoever wants to talk, could you tell us a little bit about your organization, how it came together, what you're trying to do for business in Michigan? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So MVCA started back in 2002. Roughly there were a handful of venture capitalists in the state at that time that came together around the idea that they really needed to synergize, that they wanted to help to grow Michigan's economy, to help diversify Michigan's economy, and that if they were able to build more interest in venture capital, that we would see that happen. So, fast forward now almost 16 years later, and we've grown from roughly 3 venture capitalists to 30 venture capitalists in the state of Michigan. And as a result of a lot of hard work, we have every single venture capitalist who operates here in the state as a member of MVCA, as you mentioned, 100% participation. We're really proud of that. And what that's allowed us to do is to collect data on an annual basis that we put into a research report. We've been doing this now for 11 years, and the report is largely regarded as the very best in the nation.
So, what were some of the your 2018 report just came out.
Yep.
What were some broad takeaways just from last year? Where is Michigan in the startup and VC process? You told me that it's a maturing market.
It is. It's a maturing market, but it's one that, quite honestly, a lot of people are gaining respect for and interest in. And what we're finding, and probably most telling in this report, is that while there are currently 134 venture-backed startups in the state of Michigan, there are a lot more companies that want and need and deserve, quite honestly,
to come here?
Funding. They want to start here. They want to grow here and build their businesses. So that need for capital is probably our greatest challenge right now, wouldn't you say, Tom?
Yeah, no, I think so, without a doubt. I think that there's been great progress over the last decade in the venture capital community. When you look at it, it's, despite a lot of efforts and a lot of success, keeping up with the demand of entrepreneurs who want to start companies, grow their companies, and have adequate capital to do so, that continues to be a challenge. And I think that it's one of those things. We've made good progress, but we'd be really wrong to kind of take the foot off the accelerator.
What was the multiplier effect? One of you told me about basically the impact that every dollar spent has.
That's our favorite number, by the way.
Okay.
For every dollar that venture capitalists in the state of Michigan invest in a Michigan startup company, we're able to attract roughly $4 of outside capital. And I think that's an important number. First of all, the number sounds very impressive. And one could ask, if you can bring $4 in for every dollar, how can there ever be a capital gap? And I think one of the important things is we attract more and more. So when somebody from the outside venture capitalist wants to invest in Michigan, while they're investing in a technology, they're investing in much more than that. The community and the ecosystem around that company is really important. So the ability for them to come in and co-invest with venture capitalists who are local or in the region, who have the ability to not have to hop on a 3 or 4 hour plane flight in order to get here to meet the team if the CEO needs to take a meeting on short notice, or has relationships in the wider ecosystem. That 4-to-1 is a reflection of, one, we now have traction where outside capital will come in, but we need to continue to increase that gap, or increase that amount, so 5-to-1, 6-to-1, but also to increase the entire pie of venture capital in the state of Michigan. The more capital we have in the state, the more investments we can make, the more outside capital we can attract.
What is the pipeline like here for startup business in Michigan? I know that broadly some of the sectors I saw in the report were, healthcare, IT, life sciences, fintech, and we've written about a lot of these different companies. I saw some that we've just covered in there, May Mobility, Waymark, Ash and Erie had a Shark Tank win. If you're starting a company in Michigan that is not going to be able to access traditional capital, like bank financing, where does that leave you?
Yeah, so Dustin, it's a really good question. I think there's 2 parts to that. I think first around the pipeline. we have an amazing state. If you look at the amount of research funding in the state of Michigan, the number of patents, we're a top 10 state across the board. We're not at that same place in terms of startup proportionally and venture funding. We're trying to work to close that gap. I think it's very important. There are a lot of folks with great ideas, but the ability to take your idea out of your graduate school program, or if you work at one of the big companies in the state of Michigan and feel that you're comfortable to go out and start the company on its own, you've got to have certain resources available to you. So you ask about kind of the process. As you mentioned, when you have just an idea and a concept and perhaps a patent, it's hard. You can't go to the bank and get money. That's where venture capital comes in.
Can we drill down to that for just
Sure.
a second? That can take a lot of forms, right? That might be someone like you being on the board of a new company. It might be all kinds of support, influence on hiring decisions, just in any number of ways. And
Yep.
so that requires people with the business expertise and the capital to back it up.
It does. I think you're exactly right. In fact, if you look at the venture capitals in Michigan, the venture capitals in the country, they're often, well, first of all, most groups are groups. The groups often have diverse backgrounds. They have experience in business, entrepreneurship, domain expertise in specific fields in which they invest, along with a lot of financial acumen. They will provide support in a lot of ways. I think the key thing about venture capital is it designs partnerships. So our venture capital firm and our colleagues, when they invest, they basically join the company in a way as a very supportive partner, standing at the hip of the management team across that entire domain, whatever it might be. And I think the key thing is we all have established networks. So if there's a domain expertise one of our portfolio needs that we don't have, then we have the ability to reach out into a wider network. And that's one of the great things about the state of Michigan is we've got very talented people. One of our jobs is to make sure we connect our small early companies with folks they might not otherwise connect with that helps the company to move forward.
One of the resources that MVCA provides is an entrepreneurial and investment landscape guide, and it is available in a digital format online, and it's specifically for that reason. If you're a startup in the Houghton-Hancock area and you're looking for investment resources or just business development resources, you click on where you are in the state of Michigan, and all of those resources will pop up on the screen for you.
Anything I forgot to ask you today?
I'll just make one comment. I think that program is particularly telling about an important thing to all of us, which is talent. So I've said this before to folks. I was at a conference in Chicago a few years ago. The mayor got up. There were probably 8,000 people in the audience. And the mayor basically said, as part of his opening pitch, welcome to Chicago, we really appreciate it. How many of you are from Big Ten university states? And a good portion were Midwesterners. And his comment was, thank you all, because every May your graduates get in the car and come here to Chicago, and we're really glad to have them. It was very telling for me as an investor, but also as a father, to think about that, because the fellows are often people with Michigan ties who've gone away that we then bring back into our state, who may not have thought they had an opportunity to work in venture capital or in high-tech opportunities outside of perhaps the traditional automotive industry, who we're able to bring back. So I think one of the real messages is the entrepreneurial startups attract talent of all ages, but who come to Michigan and or stay in Michigan because of those opportunities they might otherwise leave for. And I think that's an important thing both for our students and for the folks who say, I want to come out of my big corporation and start a company, but I don't know I can do it here. And one of the messages is, you can do it here. And one of our jobs is to make sure this remains a destination and or place you remain and can do whatever you want.
Well, Tom, that speaks a lot to the work that you two have done, this organization has done, because for people who aren't from Michigan, that's been talked about for years, this issue of this brain drain between young people who went to the U of M, MSU, and they moved to Chicago,
Yep.
and we're finally seeing that reverse, and it's in large part to startups.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lots of work to do, though.
Yeah, lots to still do. We're proud of what we've done, but there's still a lot to do.
Well, I really thank you for taking the time
Thank
to
you
speak
for
with
being with
Benzinga
us
today.
Dustin, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.